Instead of bringing you heat, I thought I'd bring you something soft. This piece is called The Line Feminine. It's dedicated to my mama, Ernestine, and her mama, Nettie, and to Nettie's mama, Connie, to my daughters, Ebony and Ayodele, to my granddaughter, Malaya, and you can think about your daughters and mamas and grandmamas. The line feminine. We are the ocean, etching the line that is the shore. We are the line. We are the shore. We are the ocean, calling always rising tides, rising to fall again, falling to rise again. We are the ocean, the line feminine from whence they come. We bring them forth, 10 men and grow them into women, into men. We are the ocean, etching the line that is the shore. We are the line, we are the shore. We are the line from whence they rise, the bosoms on which they fall. We are the line of women, opening wider than the ocean to bring forth the family human to dwell upon the earth. We bring them forth. 10 men then grow them into women, into men. We are the shore, constantly calling for the ocean, remembering its embrace before we had form or face. In its vastness, we knew we were the dreams of God. We understood the distance from the ocean, the strength of the line, the world of need on the shore. We are from whence they come. We bring them forth. We tend and we mend. We grow them into women, into men. We are the line feminine, both ocean and shore. We are the fruit on the vine, the ocean's roar, the rainbow's iridescence, salt in the sea. We are, as long as is, until is no more. The line, the ocean, the shore. And tonight's conversation is about the school to track pipeline. That needs a blessing of presence. That requires a gathering. And you'll see that the women have gathered. Our title, it contains a profanity. School and a pipeline to the track. It's as profane as the consideration of a child prostitute. Two words that should never be put together. Human trafficking is a huge problem globally. Here in the United States, California consistently ranks as the highest point of trafficking in the United States. I'd like to put trafficking in a context for our conversation. Trafficking is modern day slavery. It is the theft of one's being and will. So in this milieu of modern day slavery, approximately 5.4 victims of modern day slavery to every 1,000 people in the world. That many people are bonded some way. In Alameda, even though the statistics are really sketchy, they estimate that 1 out of every 4 person involved in trafficking is a child. So let's come on down to Oakland, where our track has a name, the Blade. And let's talk about the power of community to shine a light on something.
Three Girls Theater develops, promotes, and presents new plays by women and women playwrights. period, point. That's it. That's what we do, is give a platform for women voices, voices that are often muted in the industry, muted in our business, ignored, disappeared, invisibilized. Find a voice with Three Girls Theater. The program that I am the director of is called 3GT Investigates, Three Girls Theater Investigates. And that is specifically a program for BIPOC women, for women of color, for us to tell our stories, for a lead artist, a lead woman artist, to gather a group of like-minded BIPOC women, theater makers, storytellers, and use an investigative process to dig into and develop stories, to unearth stories, stories by us, about us, for us, right? And never just to tell a story just for the sake of telling a story, to utilize the telling of our stories as a change agent, as a call to action, as a warrior cry, if you will. And I know exactly the story I want to tell. I want to tell the story that everybody in the city of Oakland should be telling all of the time, right? I want to tell the story that should be on the lips of our elected officials and advocates and activists and organizers and bus drivers and teachers and everybody. City council members should be talking about what is happening to Black girls and women in the city of Oakland. And I asked Ayodele, will you help me tell this story? And she did what she always does when I asked her to help me tell stories. And she said, yes. That I'm actually an advocate of the decriminalization of sex work. I may have been the only 2018 mayoral candidate that went and spoke at the sex worker rally. I'm a proponent of sex work. I think it's healthy for our communities. What is happening on E14 is not sex work. What is happening on E14 is not self-determination. What's happening on E14 is the buying and selling of our children. And if it were blonde girls with blue eyes, there would be outrage. It would be shut down. It would be unallowed to occur. But because it is Black girls, it is allowed to continue. Because our humanity continues to be invisibilized, it is allowed to continue. And so our hope for this work is that it is yet one more assertion of our humanity, a warrior cry for us to get to work and go get about the business of collecting our babies off of the blade. We're not going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about what happens on the blade. We'll get to that. We're going to talk about how we get there.
Gathered in the room tonight are some amazing women, and they'll tell you about themselves a little bit, but let's understand who's here. So, Jasmine Williams. Jasmine is a Sacramento native with a passion for reading and writing. She fell in love with the Bay Area at an early age when she began her academic journey at San Francisco State University and has since been a resident for 10 years. There, she was an editor for the school magazine, Express Magazine. From SF State, she achieved her BA in journalism with a minor in Africana Studies and was determined to pour resources back into her community. Jasmine hopes to use her writing to shift the harmful and negative false narratives of Black people repeated in mainstream media in order to challenge and shift the culture. She's excited about reaffirming and celebrating the beauty and strength of our community with BOP through storytelling, community building, and organizing.
Just want to echo the honor of being on the panel with everybody in the room and a part of this important conversation. My name is Jasmine Williams. You could call me Jasmine. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm with the Black Organizing Project. I'm a member and also the communications director. And I'm just really excited to be a part of such an invisibilized issue in our communities. And then on the panel with amazing women and community with amazing women. So just hoping that this is just a seed that's planted and these conversations continue to grow and be brought to the forefront.
And another thing that Jasmine brings in the door with us, she's a fearless advocate for decriminalizing our youth. And decriminalization has room in this conversation tonight. Our next panelist is Selena Wilson. Selena Wilson is an Oakland native who is extremely passionate about giving back to the village that raised her. She currently serves as the Vice President of Organizational Effectiveness at the East Bay Oakland Youth Development Center, where she attended programming as a youth. In addition to her work with EOYDC, Selena serves as the head of learning and transformation at Decolonized Design, a global community development consulting firm that delivers alternatives to the DEI status quo, centering marginalized folks grounded in belonging, dignity, and justice. In her spare time, she also creates written and video content through her multi-channel platform, Selena's Musings. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Selena.
My name is Selena Wilson, and I serve in a few capacities. Very fortunate to be able to be in community this evening, as well as with a number of organizations that are near and dear to my heart day to day. One of which is the East Oakland Youth Development Center, or EOYDC. I've been affiliated with EOYDC for over 3 decades now. Started going to programming when I was a mere 4 years old, and have been a part in one way or another ever since. I'm very fortunate to work on the leadership team now, and also work with a dear friend and comrade who is on tonight's call, Ida Davis, in our work at Decolonized Design, which, as Dr. Nzinga mentioned, we focus on providing alternatives to the status quo grounded in belonging, dignity, and justice for marginalized, focused on marginalized communities and centering those who are typically at the margins.
And then we have Kampala Taiz-Rancifer. And if I am butchering your name, you can say it correctly for us when you speak yourself. And Kampala is an elementary school educator and a parent of 2 children who attend or graduated from Oakland Public Schools. Kampala is currently serving as an executive board member for the Oakland Education Association. She's committed to racial justice and serves on both the Race and Privatization Committee and the Black Women's Caucus. The mission of these groups is to improve the educational outcomes for students of color, as well as the working conditions for educators, particularly those that are Black and brown. Kampala, along with community partners, work to pass reparations for Black students, a set of policies that will invest in Black students in OUSD. During the lead up to the strike, Kampala served as chair of the Oakland Education Association Member Engagement Committee and co-chair of the organizing team. In these roles, Kampala led OEA's Art Bill, which served both as an important structure test as well as a powerful and media-worthy action. Before teaching, Kampala worked as a union organizer with SEIU, United Healthcare Workers West. Although she enjoyed that work, closing the opportunity gap drew her to teaching. Kampala believes education is one of the most important civil rights issues affecting us today. Welcome, Kampala.
Again, my name is Kampala Taiz-Rancifer. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm with the Oakland Education Association. We represent teachers, nurses, speech pathologists, psychologists, counselors, librarians, social workers, early childhood educators, and substitutes. People don't like being left out, so I always got to give a shout out to everybody. Yeah, I just really appreciate being here. This discussion is very, very important. And, very, very needed to have a focus being put on Black girls when we often hear so much about the impact that racism has on our Black males.
So this is the year of yes, by the way, for Three Girls Theater. And every time I turn to AJ, I was like, well, I want to do this. Yes. So here we are. Yes. Yes to Black girls. Yes to Black women. Yes to telling our stories. So thank you, Three Girls Theater. Thank you, our Zoom host, Zach, who's in the back.
Some of the major issues that Black girls are confronted with is just people misunderstand young Black girls in the classroom. behaviors are interpreted as disrespect, insubordination. Oh, they're just talking back. They're, and so those behaviors are disciplined. And again, that leads to the push out. So there's a lot of issues around culture and climate that often lead to the criminalization of our kids. But there's other issues as well. There's the curriculum and the pedagogy that really doesn't reflect our students' backgrounds or learning styles. And so we have these culture and climate issues, and then we have this invisibilizing of our students, which is really this recipe for disaster, and it leads to, a lot of students failing. There is also just a real clear lack of investment in Black students, and particularly Black girls. OUSD really starves schools, especially schools with large populations of Black students, of resources. And then we also see a lot of school closures in schools with large populations of Black students. And then we wonder why our students aren't successful. So this also is this issue around not feeling welcome in school. So if we're thinking about, how do students get exposed to or become vulnerable to this sex trafficking, and, Oakland being this major hub for sex trafficking in California, these are some of the reasons why these patterns persist, because we are not actually investing in Black students in OUSD.
I just believe like the continued criminalization of all youth leads to like the hypersexualization and the harassment of girls. And I think the problem with that is when the narrative is told and when the story is told, the girl story is often invisibilized. I think the numbers that you said, the girls were about 50, like half of the suspend. Yeah. So we often hear of the young boys, rightfully so, because this is impacting all of our babies. But oftentimes we see OUSD react more to providing resources for young males. So for instance, the African American Male Achievement Program and things like that are resources that we all need and that needs to be there. But oftentimes how the impact of the criminalization is not told on little girls. And in our data, we find that a lot of this criminalization happens in middle school, the time when like young women, young girls are going through the most, some of the biggest changes of their lives. And so even down to like our biology is criminalized. So also the way that we act and how we behave in classrooms is seen as a threat when we know it's just adolescent behavior, but also the data reflects that, okay, we see the numbers heightening in middle school and middle school areas of expulsions and suspensions. We're also seeing like there's not a holistic approach to like adolescent development in general. So I would say in OUSD, while, there's a lot of strides being made to provide these resources, oftentimes like impact that it has on young girls is not told, and the resources don't follow that because it's invisibilized.
The issues surrounding Black girls was not seen as being as urgent, which is why that effort was initially put into efforts for young Black men, which is important. And both, I think, have had a lot of need. And I've never quite understood why, other than misogynoir, why Black girls have been seen as less in need of these supports when all the numbers and lived experience tells us that they're facing similar suspension rates, similar rates of harassment, and all these sort of things, right? And one thing that I will uplift as well is that while Black women per capita are more, have a little bit more success with formal education at a higher educational, when we're talking about post-secondary education, I want to uplift the research of Dr. Charles Cole, who talks about the Black achievement trauma tax. His research is focused on this in the context of Black men. But what I see, and this is some stuff that I've talked to some researchers about, a lot of the markers that we look at and say, well, Black girls, I know, and we're talking about the school to track pipeline. I personally know a number of young ladies who had great grades in school, but the trauma, the harassment, the sexual assaults, the abuse, good grades did not prevent them from being trafficked. I know young ladies who were trafficked from college, right? And so we have to talk about the full picture. And then that academic achievement is one thing, but their social emotional needs not being met, the harm that they experience, the sexual harassment that they experience, sometimes at the hand of adults even working within the schools, which I think we'll get into later. It still does not, I think a lot of times people are looking at the wrong proxies to think about or gauge how much harm our girls may be experiencing.
Paula did mention this a little bit, but what we saw is that girls were being suspended predominantly for what people were calling willful defiance. And this included things like chewing your gum, rolling your eyes, talking back to teachers. For young Black girls, like, my hair's not done, I'm wearing a scarf and a hood today with my head down. Oftentimes those kind of behaviors are criminalized and seen as disruption, or labeled really as disruptions to class time, and really pushing young girls out of class. So they're not getting that experience with their peers. They're getting singled out and embarrassed in front of their peers, and ultimately causing them to disengage from wanting to even be on school campuses. And so oftentimes girls are treated as future angry Black women versus young adolescents making mistakes, having, doing normal things that kids do, that, and not having the resources on campuses to be able to deal with it. We see teachers and security officers and police at that time, criminalizing, you're in detention, you're off of school site hours and stuff, and which ultimately is a detriment to their learning and their some of their social emotional learning environments taken away from them.
I remember a couple years back when they arrested and handcuffed a 7-year-old Black girl. And so we see, even with our babies, literally got baby teeth, snaggletooth, getting arrested with handcuffs. It's really outrageous, the ways in which our children are treated. And I think Jasmine hit it right on the head when she talked about the fact that our girls are criminalized for engaging in developmentally appropriate behaviors. So when a 7-year-old has a tantrum, which is developmentally appropriate and normal, she is seen as a threat, just as when a young Black girl who called the police for protection because she was being threatened by multiple people then tries to defend herself, she is then again criminalized in a way that we just know would not be the case if she were a 16-year-old white girl. We just know that.
Some of the biggest things that I think are really important, particularly to Black girls, is recruitment and retention of Black educators, so students can see themselves reflected in the teaching staff. It's one thing to be, and I've seen this numerous times, going into a school site and you don't see yourself reflected in any of the people that are actually educating. You might see yourself reflected somewhere on campus, but it's not in the teaching staff. And that's really important for our students to be able to see us at all these different levels.
But Kampala, I think it's important to point, yes, the resolution got passed, but for folks that don't know, I would love for you to talk about how the representative from the state board decided to descend from on high and come into the city of Oakland and tell Black students that and Black families and Black teachers and Black people in general, that the only way that they were going to get anywhere near to those demands being met were if they agreed to the continued assault on our communities, but through the closure of our schools.
Absolutely. We won a lot. And so I always want to lead with that, because then I have to go down and tell this story. But we won a lot. But the process to win these demands was the most horrifying campaign I personally have participated in. So as Kat mentioned, we brought the demand for to stop school closures in schools with large populations of Black students. And for those of you that don't know, um, 16 out of the 18 schools that have been closed in OUSD have been in schools with large populations of Black students. So there is disproportionality that's happening with school closures. And what happens when schools are closed is that it helps to spur the gentrification of our communities. And so what we are saying is you need to stop the closure of schools with large populations of Black students. And the district says, well, we have to close schools because the state is saying we owe this debt. This is a way in which we're balancing our budget. And we said, if you must close schools, stop closing schools with large populations of Black students. So we contended with this. We kept with that line. The state came down, the state trustee, and said, I am going to use my powers to stay a resolution, which means I'm going to tell you to stop this resolution should you continue to press forward. So he had never used this power before on any other resolution in the history of his tenure. But he was going to use it on the reparations for Black students. So thinking about being able to stabilize our communities, thinking about being able to stabilize our schools that serve our Black students, they want to and will and are determined to continue the process of closing schools in Black communities. And that is the one demand that they struck.
Black folks and Black communities have been organizing for over 50 years to decriminalize our schools and to protect youth in schools. For BOP, our journey to that goal started about 10 years ago in 2011. When a young man, Raheem Brown, was murdered by school police officers at Skyline High School. So in 2011, we embarked on a campaign called the Bettering Our School System campaign to first abolish the school police department, but really focus on an entire transformation of school culture, like understanding that it's an ecosystem of policies and discipline practices that create this kind of punitive and toxic culture in our schools. And we really saw that us targeting school sites or OUSD in particular was a way, like our way to dismantle the school to prison pipeline and support with ending mass incarceration.
And Black women are at the forefront of so much of the work that is happening in Oakland in the leadership positions of reimagining, refunding, restoring. I don't even know that there's the right adjective to describe what is happening on our streets right now. What I can say is that from 2012 to 2019, there was a 47% overall spike in homicides. I don't know what the number is, Selena might, but I know that we're ahead of that already for 2021 because we are at over 50 homicides and we haven't even hit May yet. What has been particularly noticeable for me about this is the number of girls and women. Large numbers. I mean, per capita, in comparison what it normally is, and certainly per capita, the number of girls and women that are being killed right now is overwhelming.
Almost all forms of violence that we see in our community is in some way tied to state-sanctioned violence or oppression, right? Like there are very complex systemic issues that have created the conditions where we are seeing these high homicide rates. They're treated like little machines, a lot of this kind of military style teaching for our kids. And it breaks my heart, and it upsets me beyond what I can say. But I say all that to say, when you see the spirit being kind of sucked out of these kids year over year, and you see them going from little smiley toddlers to, by the age 5 or 7, feeling like they can't smile in pictures anymore. It starts so early for our kids. By the time they're teenage years, there's so much self-medication. There's so much, they've been taught that they can't be vulnerable, and the only acceptable emotion is being stoic or being angry, right? Yeah, they have exactly the rates of PTSD, complex PTSD, chronic stress. All of these things is so high for our kids. And I don't even have enough words. So when I see all of this stuff going on, I'm heartbroken, but I'm not surprised, because I see what they're going through. I see the ways in which they are made to feel like they cannot be human. It's this void, this long-standing devaluation that is so hard to fill once someone's done that to you for the bulk of your life. So again, I can go on and on. As you can see, this deeply disturbs me. But at EOYDC, this is why the number one thing is we want our kids to come into our space and feel free.
Until we as a community get to the point where we can actually weigh what the value of education is to children, and then ask the question, as long as our society is structured the way it is, why would we send our youth outside of our community to be educated by people who've demonstrated their hostility and by experience made education itself an unpleasant situation, while simultaneously they report that we are uninterested in education? Why is our ethnicity not taken into account, considering the amount of systemic oppression we've experienced inside schools? So why isn't cultural relevance taken into account in supplying a child the appropriate education?
That's a good question, and I think it's a question that it's worth, really examining, right? I think why we're facing a lot of what we're facing is because, other communities, they have the political capital, they have the privilege and the access to be able to fight for the things that their children need and deserve, right? All students deserve. But what we need to be doing, and what I think we are doing in a lot of ways, because as Jasmine pointed out, the organizing that's happening in Oakland is an example of how, Black families, teachers, parents, students are all lifting their voices and saying, enough is enough. At this point, we are demanding, we're not asking, we're demanding that these things change. And that, and that we do see the enrichment, because the way in which, as I said earlier, that our students learn is different. You raised the question or the comment around, the enrichment and what Selena is experiencing at EOYDC, which a lot of my students used to go there. Thank you very much for that program. It's amazing. I would just say that that's how our students learn, right? And that's why I think like project-based learning is really good, because you can, as you know, learn through art. You can learn through all of these different things, where in the classroom right now, as a classroom teacher, I'm not in the classroom now, but it was a lot of focus on math, a lot of focus on literacy, which are all super important. But even when it comes to sciences, where that becomes like an extra thing, you know what I mean? If you want to teach history, that's an extra thing that's not really necessary. That's problematic, because all of our kids learn in so many different ways, and their access points into education is so it's different.
What can people do to get engaged in the campaign? Do you have a specific call to action right now?
Again, I'm going to drop the Reparations for Black Students in a website where you can still sign up and get our newsletter, where you'll be able to see all the upcoming actions. We'll be having some in May and throughout the summer, some engagements, mainly with families and students. The fight for against school closures continues. The night that they scratched the school closures off of the resolution, I created another resolution within 20 minutes with the rest of the coalition partners, and we resubmitted it on the floor. So that resolution is going to have to get put onto the agenda. So we are going to be pushing board President Shanti Gonzalez to actually put it on the agenda, because right now it has not made it, it has not been calendared. So that will also be something that will come through in the newsletter.
We're building what we're calling a united front. So I'm just going to drop my email in the chat so folks could reach out to me, and I'll connect you with another organizer or myself to get to know and get ready for the push. Like I said, we won co-convenership, and we really want to pull community partners to sit at that OUSD table and to craft the alternative. So we're just busy trying to organize, build relationship with folks so that we're ready for some of what we know is coming down the pike. So some of these fights that are coming up, but just want to remain like outside of the district in the sense of that's where the community power really comes from, and want to continue building power there. So
thanks to everyone for creating this space centered around Black girls. That really is important. And I'm grateful that this is a series because we do not center our Black girls enough. So I'm very grateful for that. In terms of calls to action, EOYDC, we are offering socially distant safe programming now and through the summer. We've been doing it actually since last June. We've published some learning briefs on how we've been able to do it with 0 cases tied to EOYDC. So if you have young people, kindergarten through 12, and you would like support with our free programming, definitely check that out. We want, welcome all. And also you can follow our social media for just general updates on programming, as well as ways to support throughout the year. And then for those who are interested in the work of decolonized design, you can also follow our work, Facebook, Instagram, all those things, as well as our website. So yeah, we're here to serve. So hopefully if you have young people, send them our way.
But it's good that we are gathered, and it's good, the expansiveness that art offers, not just to show you pretty pictures, but to be able to go deep underneath the surface and to elicit the things that are common challenges, but also to uphold our strength, our resilience, the enormous amount of fight that we have in us for ourselves. So we invite you to follow the project. Go tell somebody about this panel tonight and invite them to participate in the next one. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate you for blessing us with your presence.